Podcast listeners, you made it. Destination Aviation. I'm your host, Jeff Miller. Thanks for tuning back in, or tuning in for the first time. I don't know. It may be your first time here. I know I did have a first time comment from someone on YouTube for our last episode of the B-52 bomber. Basically said I was an idiot for not making that episode 52, which this is episode 52. You know what? They have a point. I'm not going to say they don't have a point. They have a point. And do I have an excuse why? No, I don't. But, again, it's my podcast. It is what it is. 51, 52, B-52s, Rock Lobster, whatever you so choose. No, I do appreciate it. There was a good comment. I'll keep that in mind when I'm on episode 71. And for those aviation nerds out there, you know what I'm talking about. But today is a special episode because I get to talk with my friend Gary Mascaro from the formerly Scottsdale Airport. Just retired, hot off the press, working in the FBO world now. So without further ado, I'll get right into the podcast with Gary, and then we'll finish up with some show notes. But I think you're going to love it. I always enjoy talking to Gary. He's honest and he's real. So let's hop over to him. Well, as we said at the beginning of the podcast, we're welcoming Gary Mascaro with us here on Destination Aviation. So, Gary, thank you for being with us.
Jeff, thanks so much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. I usually start the show off with asking our history, but I'm trying to remember. It's been within the last 5 years. You were so kind, we actually reached out to you for a visit when you were running the Scottsdale Airport, and I think that's the first time I actually met you. I knew of you, but I think that's the first time I officially met you. Well, it's funny because it's been a short amount of time, but I will say, at least from my side to it, I knew from the very beginning that I was going to like you as a person because you're just down to earth, and I love if you've listened to this, okay, it's all right if you haven't, but if other people that know this podcast that have listened to episodes, I very much love just kind of real conversations and maybe a peek behind the curtain of what we do. I think a lot of times in aviation we have unintended barriers, and somebody who's real resonates a lot with me, and I feel like it resonates a lot with other people. And I would say I find you to be very real all the time, and I appreciate that.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think you're the same way, Jeff. I think we're cut from the same mold.
Probably.
It's a good thing most of the time. Sometimes not so much, but hey, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah, you know what? For the people that don't like it, they don't have to listen to me. So they don't have to listen on this. They can tune off. That's what I always say.
That's right.
My mom's actually, I don't know if she's my biggest fan, but she likes to tell me she listens to the podcast to go to sleep. So I'll take that as maybe a benefit. I don't know.
Well, Mom, if you're listening right now, stay awake. This is going to be a good one.
Absolutely, Mom. You got nothing better to do. She's living on the railroad tracks now. What is she going to do? Go back behind and look at the trains? Come on. So I, honestly, when I was preparing for this podcast, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and there were some surprises in there that I didn't know about you, and I don't know if maybe you want to touch briefly on kind of your history in aviation.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So yeah, I did meet you about 5-6 years ago when you came for the visit. That was cool. And then obviously we see each other every which way and where ever since. And I'm not going away anytime soon.
We love that. I'm glad.
So 26 and a half years in the industry, started off as a $9.68 an hour part-time ops guy at Scottsdale.
What'd you do with all that money?
I was just rolling in the dough, McDonald's, it was interesting, but it was one of the, you got to get your foot in the door is what I was always told.
What was that role?
I'm sorry?
What was that role that you had? You said it was at the Scottsdale Airport?
It was just an operations tech.
Operations tech. Okay. Good deal.
Yeah. And then 7 months later, all of a sudden, boom, everybody left. The director left, the assistant director, the ops manager. So we had to backfill, and I had experience in finance. That's my strength. And they asked me to take on the role of the finance manager there. And I moved into that and dove into leases. And away I went and turned into the assistant director for 8 years. And had the opportunity to say at that airport, I've touched every single role. I've actually done every single role there at one point or another, whether it's a direct report to myself or I had to do it because I had to fill it. Because, Jeff, small airport, small group of people, which is super cool about And then from there, I went to the City of Phoenix. Worked at Phoenix Deer Valley Airport for 5 long years, and then back to Scottsdale.
So that was one of the surprises in your resume that I actually saw was Deer Valley. I did not know you were there.
Yes, I decided, Jeff, to leave Scottsdale. It was time for me to go for lots of reasons. Got an opportunity to become the boss at the Phoenix Deer Valley. At that time, it was the busiest GA airport in the country. Worked with a handful of wonderful folks over there, and then I came back to Scottsdale, which is an interesting story. Only if you want to hear it.
I would love to hear it. That's what everybody on this channel wants to hear. So before we get into how much you love it, when you started at Scottsdale, was that your background? What made you want to be an entry-level person at an airport? Were you just interested? Did you just need a job, or did you go to school for aviation? Like, what led you to say, yeah, let me go to the airport? Was it just the money for McDonald's?
That's definitely not the money for McDonald's. But so I'm an Italian from New York.
Okay.
Born and raised, grew up there. Was actually heading to Annapolis. Got on board to go to Annapolis.
Really?
Signed a contract, everything ready to go, and I was going to be a naval aviator. But at the time back then, and you're probably as old as I am, or maybe a little younger, they didn't have LASIK to change your eyesight. So I was 20/30, and they're like, no, sir, you can't fly the airplane. You must sit on the back seat. And I refused to do that. So I decided at that point it's in my best interest to get out of New York, and decided to go all the way to Arizona and go to Arizona State University. So that's what I did.
That seems right. You've always seemed more of a maverick to me than a goose. So I think you probably made the right decision there.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I know I'm taller than Tom Cruise. That's for sure.
Okay, that's fair. So that's how you got into working at the airport in Scottsdale?
Yep, I wanted to then play airport. If I can't fly the airplane the way I wanted, then I wanted to play airport. And that's why I jumped into Scottsdale.
That seems fair. Okay, so you got into Scottsdale. And then you were saying kind of that trajectory, what led you to Phoenix and back from Phoenix to Scottsdale. You said you had a story there. I would love to hear it.
Yes, well, thank you. Well, fun fact, I'm one of the very few, if the only person that I know of that was defined in the city of Scottsdale, and you can look that up at the council meetings, as executive on loan.
Executive on loan, okay.
I was a pawn for the Phoenix and Scottsdale to bridge the gap on an issue with their beautiful facilities right near Scottsdale Airport, as well as they were having some significant challenges at Scottsdale Airport politically. Okay. And I knew some of the council members from being in Scottsdale, and obviously they liked me. So I get invited downtown to the mothership of Sky Harbor, get to this table. I'm sitting next to our dear friend, Carl Newman, if you recall him.
Yeah.
God rest his soul. Absolutely. He was my boss, and Big Daddy always took care of me. And I'm sitting at this table, and the city managers of both cities are there. The mayors are there, and I'm here, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? And he goes, be quiet. I got this. So the long story short was, Phoenix wanted a connection point to the Scottsdale quarter from Kierland, which is the two major pretty locations in Scottsdale, Phoenix. And Scottsdale needed significant help because if Jeff, you piss off the rich folks in Scottsdale, they're going to have some political clout. So
yes.
I was asked to go back there as executive on loan to help, one, hire the new aviation director and help with the job description, and two, hold down the fort and make some employee changes.
Gotcha.
So that's what happened. I moved on over there. The couple of employees that were a challenge, that were attempting to run the airport, did not want me to go there, and then wanted me to report to them. So Carl, being Carl, went to the city manager's office in Scottsdale and said, I'll be right back, Gary. Walked on out. 5 minutes later, walked out with the city manager of Scottsdale and said, you're in charge of everything. You report directly to me.
Well, that's fantastic. It's funny as you're describing this. I always am in my head thinking how I will title these episodes, and I think it's going to be Executive on Loan for you.
Okay, I'll take it.
I think that's a perfect title.
So I started February 1st. I worked with the FAA, and 5 days later, we got a letter to allow larger aircraft to operate out of Scottsdale, which was a big issue and one of the major challenges, because I had a really good relationship with FAA and Mark McClarty and all of those folks who he just retired as well. And April, we were about ready to select, and my good friend Rod Didger,
Oh
do you
yeah,
know Rod?
I know Rod well. Rod's
He
a
was
good
on
dude.
the finalist list,
Oh,
and
no.
then I met with the council to give him an update on all the positive stuff and did a presentation. And then 2 days later, they came to my office and said, "We want to hire you." And I'm like, "No, I'm going back to Phoenix. I made a deal.
Yep.
I'm good." And they said, "No, here." And they slid the piece of paper and said, "Write your salary down." I was like, "Oh shit."
Wow.
So I
Wow.
wrote a number, and they came back and said, "Sure," which was higher than poor Rod was going to get at the time. And I went back to Carl, and he says, "Gary, get the hell out of Phoenix. It's a good move for you." And here I am in Scottsdale for the next 15 years as the director.
Wow, what a story. Well, things seem to work out pretty well for Rod. He seems to be happy over there with 80K, and
He is doing great, and he still gives me shit to this day. I was like, "Let it go, man. That's 15 years ago."
all these years later. Well, I think they made the right choice. I like Rod. Rod's a good dude, and he's been knocking it out of the park everywhere he's at. So let's let bygones be bygones. So how many zeros did you write down on that?
I can neither confirm or deny anything.
That seems fair. What does an executive on loan get paid?
Yeah, it was weird to see my name on a council resolution. That was weird.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting when you first start dabbling into that, because it's such a weird world, even to this day. Kind of that public facing entity where someone can come, and if you're not used to it, right? Like if you were an alien, you came to this world, you'd be like, "This is weird. This person's yelling at them, and they're just listening to it," and then that person walks away, and then they move on and they talk about other stuff and they don't address any of that. And so it's such a weird kind of, we got resolutions, we got Robert's rules. I tell people, especially like I talk to some of the folks like at AAA Atlanta that are younger and they're getting into the industry. I'm like, whether it's an airport, if you don't have an airport right next to you that has a governing body like ours, they're usually attached to something county or city. It's like, go to it and listen to just what city business is. I was like, it's unique and it's kind of fun in some ways. I mean, you get to. I've always said this: if I've had a civic lesson over the last 25 years in aviation, it would be if I ever had an issue with something in my own community, I would go and I would be nice and I would say, "Thank you for everything that you've all done. You're amazing at your jobs.
Yeah.
I have a problem." If you go in and you start, like we had somebody, not this airport, but an airport I worked at before, complain about semi trucks and pollution driving down the road, had nothing to do with the airport, and you just lost everybody right there, right? Because they're like, I don't know what this person's even trying to attach here. but
Yeah.
but it's kind of surreal to just have that. I don't know. It's interesting. You find yourself kind of, when I leapfrogged in my career, it probably was from Pittsburgh to Laredo, to where I was really like, oh wait, so I'm in charge, and I guess I have to figure this out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They lean on us as airport executives to figure things out because usually they don't know anything about airports, and that's why I was always told that's why we pay you the big bucks. It's like, okay.
That seems fair. Well, you did an amazing job. I mean, just what you showed us, because we've tried to pull some of the ideas you've had out. You've built a lovely facility there with the restaurant, and it's an amazing airport. So I would assume you have to be very happy with your accomplishments. You said 16 years total with Scottsdale?
Yeah, about 15 and a half years total. But yeah, and I'm extremely happy. I love the city of Scottsdale, as you and I talked earlier, and they treated me well. I've had 8 bosses in 15 years, and all 8 have been wonderful. Can't say a negative thing. They trusted me, and my motto is, I'll call you when I need you. I'll give you a heads up if the mayor's going to get a call. Leave me alone. Let me do my thing. And they all allowed that to happen, which I think gave me the tools to success.
Sure.
And it's all about team. That the whole team is, and there's a lot of them retired out, and then I was the last man standing, and then we have a whole fresh team, and they're going to do great. And by the way, I'd like to do shameless plug. Assistant Aviation Director position is on the street for Scottsdale Airport. Great location, wonderful opportunity, pays really well. check it out. Go to their website, scottsdaleairport.com, look for jobs or City of Scottsdale.
It's awesome. I will, if it's still open when I put this episode out, I'll make sure to tag it in the show notes so people could easily find it. But you said it's on the streets right now, correct?
Yeah, they're putting it back out on the street. They want to get another larger candidate pool.
I can't imagine it will be too difficult to find somebody who wants to move to your neck of the woods. I think everybody wants to move to Scottsdale. Just from when I was down there, that's what I saw. So if you're interested, go find the job application. Look in the show notes if it's still open. We'll put it out there for everybody. No, but that's great. So okay, 16 years in this. So at this point, like I said, I was trying to do at least my due diligence before it came on, so I didn't sound like a complete asshat when I talked to you. But you, at this point, you said no to Goose. You started at the airport. You went to Deer Valley. You came back to Scottsdale. All of your experience at this point now has been working directly for an airport sponsor, whether that be Phoenix or Scottsdale.
Yes, that is absolutely accurate.
Okay. And then more recently, you've shifted and you've retired from the Scottsdale airport, correct?
That is correct. About 35 days ago, I retired from government service.
35 days ago. And so we have a good mix of listeners here. Some of our friends that we know, and I'm sure they will poke fun at mostly me because you're a professional, but they'll poke fun at me on all my episodes, including this one. Those of you know who you are. But we also have a lot of listeners that aren't in aviation. So maybe you could just describe your new job and what happened from your departure at Scottsdale to this new role. What is it? What's different about it? Maybe a quick upfront synopsis of what it is.
Piece of cake. So I retired earlier than I expected because an opportunity presented itself about 3 or 4 months ago. The biggest one that I'm involved with is the FBO, the fixed base operation. So that's the hotel for the airplanes. So when planes fly into our airports, as Jeff knows, they land, they go to this building or facility or hangar to get fuel and catering and hangar overnight and getting taken care of. I'm the new vice president for operational planning. I'm not sure what that means yet, so I'm still figuring that out.
Is it vice president in loan or?
No, we don't want a loan now. Otherwise, I would have stayed unretired because I would have kept my pension growing a little bit bigger.
That seems fair.
But it's a really cool opportunity, and they checked every box, and that's why I decided to jump ship. Biggest job is airport relations. They didn't even have that role. Pretty large throughout the world. In the U.S., which I'm the VP for, one of the VPs. So airport relations, which I happen to know a few airport operators.
Just a tad, right? Just a few.
Yeah, just a couple. Thank you, AAAE, for all of that. I'm also in charge of all their capital improvement program. They have a very large capital improvement program, and that falls under my wing to make sure the projects get built. And I have a lot of experience. You talked about the building that we built and the hangars that we built. You know, it's unusual for airports to actually build and fund projects like that. We did all of that, which is cool. And then I'm in charge of their facilities. So standardization of facilities, fuel farm operation. So that's kind of my role as of right now. And it's morphing because this role has never been created before. This is a new thing. For Jet.
Good. No, I love that. I love too that they're focusing on the airport relationship aspect of it because so many leases and some of the stuff you were describing there that as an airport operator that we all hear, right, normal wear and tear and all that fun stuff with reversionary clauses and capital outlay. And when I started off, I worked for an airport that was mixed. It was so small that we had essential air service, and the airport manager. He also ran charter, sold the fuel, so he owned the FBO, but it's like the side gig. They paid him a little bit of money to manage the airport, and so a lot of my job, there was a 139 aspect because we had essential air service, but there was dealing with, basically any of the functions in FBO, like you described, hotel for aircraft, so fueling, newspapers, coffee, all that stuff. And then from there, I went to school in Florida, and I worked at the Daytona Beach Airport, but I worked directly for a fixed-base operator, which was a different perspective for me. So I'm just wondering, I know you're only a month into it, that kind of perspective from really, if you're managing an airport, you're a government direct quasi government employee. Is just in the United States pretty much how it is.
Yeah.
It's how's a month into it feeling for you?
Well, one of the things I think one of my successes at Scottsdale for all those years is that I felt like I truly operated the airport like a business. And I put my money where my mouth is and invested $28 million on a hangar facility, bringing in operators to come and manage it as an example. So the transition is funny. One of the questions I had with my new boss was, are you going to be comfortable coming out of the public sector? It's going to be easier. It'll feel different. And I was like, and larger companies have a process just like everybody else. And there's paperwork to do and approvals and all of that. So it's not much different, to be honest with you. I thought it would be, but 32 days in, it feels the same. And it's all about relationships. I mean, Jeff, your success, my success is about relationships. And I'm just on the other side of the table. I got to visit Palm Beach and had a great conversation with Laura Beebe from the other side. And and I said, I get you, right. And I know what you need, and I can educate you on what they need. So it's not like it's much different. I'm just on the different side of the table as of 32 days in.
Yeah, well, and I think I love that perspective on it. So much of what we do at the end of the day, I always try to take a common sense approach to it, and sometimes people will say to me, because I can be very blunt sometimes and just straightforward with my thoughts. And I'm not even just saying they're always accurate. It's just they're blunt. But, people are like, some people that don't really know me will be like, you're playing chess. And I'm like, no, I'm checkers guy. If I'm telling you what I'm telling, like, there's not this big secret. Like, at the end of the day, we're going to do a lease with you. You're going to amortize that over a certain amount of time to make money back out of it. What can we do to make your project a success? With both those statements being known. And it's funny, more recently in a deal we were talking about, the first thought that came across was, when I first looked at what they proposed to what we were proposing, it's like, okay, you're in New York and we're out in San Francisco. How do we at least get somewhere like Omaha? I don't know, somewhere. But yeah, so it's interesting. But I would assume you probably have a relationship with every airport manager, director, take whatever, sideways on the title there, but you probably know everybody, right?
Yeah, for the most part. There's a few that I'm not familiar with, but again, I will be continuing to go to AAA as the airport relations guy, and I hope that the folks that listen to this or see this is like, yeah, I may be on the other side, but I get both sides, and we won't want to work together at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting because, some of the stuff we talked about up front where, a lot of the job sometimes is, I don't want to say that there's negatives, but, especially being a governing body at an airport, a lot of times the people that come and make a comment to the airport, it's usually not a good comment, right? And I say that I'm even guilty of that in my own life, as I don't go, oh, that you did a really nice job paving the road, Village, thank you. I just go about my daily life, right? And so often, you can kind of just hear like the negatives of maybe an airport, whether that's noise or whatever it might be. But, the internal people, us, you, the FBOs, even the same, AOPA, all these groups, we all want the same thing. We want planes effectively, efficiently, safely to go. And we want people that are private industry to make a profit in this. I mean, that's capitalism, and that's how the U.S. works, right?
Right.
And so if there's a fair deal to be made between groups, between airports, and you building infrastructure, I think they have the right person for that job, because I've always appreciated your approach to kind of the nonsense, non-bullshit, just kind of straightforward. Hey, here's the deal. Can we make it work? Because that, I think, all the rest of the stuff you can just throw to the side. And I love the fact that you're not gone. You just evolved into the other side. Because quite honestly, I love that your perspective is over there. Because like you said, then you can trickle that back this way with outside perspective on how to make things better.
Yeah, and I think, and you get it, Jeff. I mean, cut from the same mold. And if whenever you just retire and we suck you to our this side of it now, you'll get it. And I hope, and I really do hope, one of my goals is for the airport directors and managers that I will work with understands that and gives us just a little bit more trust than other operators that are just like, because I mean, I tailored myself like you do to be a no bullshit guy. Here it is, and that's it. It's a deal, and I'm willing to listen. But I gotta make sure the company's profitable.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be gouging, and it's all part of the same team. There's some unfortunate stuff going on in Congress right now, where we're not on the same team, and the teams are divided a little bit, and we want to get everybody back on the same page. And as an FBO operator or as an airport executive like yourself, we should be at the table at the same time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And all rowing in the same direction. And, I've had some more recent conversations, even with like AOPA and stuff, just general broad based, like, hey, as an airport operator, one, I'm a member of AOPA. I'm Jeff Miller with, my piston aircraft. And I can understand that part of the world. And I can even understand certain things like privacy in aviation, right? As an airport manager, I can totally understand. I wouldn't like if I was driving home and someone could read my license plate and know I just picked up a gallon of milk from the grocery store and I'm Jeff Miller and I'm driving home. Nobody would really like. So if you think about like practical sense stuff, like I get that. I also get ADSB technology helping airports. Like in our case, it was more of a situational awareness of what's going on because we don't do things, in Illinois as a state, landing fees have never really developed here. And so, for us, the surveillance part of it really was to have a better understanding of what's going on. Because at our airport, we have 3 different FBOs, right? And we have different 135 operators. And once someone hit the ground, really kind of what's happening there. But with that same logic, I was like, it's not like it's lost on me, like why somebody wouldn't like that. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't like that.
Right. Yeah, I get it. I think it's a tool that should be used wisely, just like they always say.
Right.
I think there's arguments for both sides, and I think that certain entities should have that ability. I am a believer in landing fees. I don't think it's fair for operators that are on the field to burden all of the costs, especially if you're in an airport like a Scottsdale or Palm Beach, where you are literally most of your traffic during your busy times transient nature. And I think it's fair to help offset those costs to be fair for both sides. And I feel like that particular argument right now about ADSB is warranted in a way, but I think it should be limited to allowing certain entities like an airport to have the ability to look and, if need be, bill or whatever to reasonable fees. It comes down to also reasonable fees as well. And that's my personal opinion on it.
Yeah, no, I think, again, I think that there can be, to everything, all the points you just made, there's a practical sense. I mean, I know in the U.S., and this kind of changes, but generally speaking, 19,000 total airports, most of those like private small strips, around 3,300 in the NIPIAS, give or take, and then 500 that are commercial service. NIPIAS being the National Plan of Integrated Airport System, for those who are listening that aren't in aviation. But airports like Scottsdale, Van Nuys, Teterboro, Chicago Executive, those airports are self-sustaining. They're not a burden on local taxpayers. I mean, some of them might have some taxing authority. In our case, we don't, but some do. But generally speaking, these airports are self-sustaining. They're making their own revenue. So all the points you just made, absolutely. But the majority of general aviation airports, as you know, they don't make money. And so typically there is, at some point, whether you're like Stark County, Indiana, or they hand it off to a small, maybe FBO that has this 100 load lead tank to operate it. They hand this stuff off, but there's always usually, a certain amount that comes from either the county or the city to subsidize those operations. So a lot of the conversations that I have with the groups like AOPA or other general aviation oriented groups, or even just our local piston guys, is I can understand some of the practicality of what you say. If you can understand my side, is to some of the comments earlier about the community coming and seeing the airport, if they're already negative about it and we're all infighting, even though we really shouldn't be, I think logically we could say, out of all the general aviation airports, how many have landing fees? Not that many. The ones that do generally are the busiest, right? And that's, there's a way to one, create incentive and revenue in those type of locations, but there's also a real threat out there that a lot of these airports don't make money, and the local taxpayers are getting tired of paying for the airport to exist. And so, it's a external threat that somebody, well, why keep putting $500,000 into the local airport that, for me, I fly out of wherever 90 miles away to Las Vegas, whatever I'm doing. And so, there's no connection to it. And so I feel that that's, if we can all work together to find a solution that makes sure that these assets are still available and open, that's really what we're all trying to do.
Right. Open for the right people. That's right. I agree. I wouldn't want to be driving down the street after getting my gallon of milk and Joe down the street can look up my license plate.
Right.
But I don't have a problem if the government, I guess, if I blow through a red light, almost kill somebody, they have my license plate that they can utilize and find and track me down.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the happy medium that I hope we can get to. And I think we will.
I would think. And, I think the practical, there's a lot, when people are out in front, and there's a lot of sound bites that come out, but when you have more just backroom, honest conversations like we're having now, most people are reasonable, and most people are like, to your example you just made, oh, yeah, I would want to know that information too if somebody flew through a red light. I mean, right. And that's, again, if we're all being reasonable with each other, we can kind of approach that. And you will continue to be based in Scottsdale.
Yes, I will be based in Scottsdale and bouncing around quite a bit and checking things out. Plus, I got to keep tabs on my old airport, man. I had a lot of good things happening there, and before I left, I felt like it was in Groundhog's Day. You know how that goes, Jeff. Over and over every up budget this year, up that. I mean, I'm on master plan number 2 at Scottsdale. I'm just like, okay. So I was letting the new folks kind of run it, and just because they haven't had the experience of it, and it's just like, so this to me, this new is so electrifying, this new gig, because I'm excited to get and try new things and start new stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting, when I, from the perspective of being an airport operator to when I worked at the FBO. Now, I obviously was not in a high-level position like yours. I was in, Jeff can buy McDonald's level when I worked at the FBO. But it was interesting. It was a family-run FBO in Daytona Beach, Florida. And so, the bigger operators like Shelter and stuff that were on the airfield, we were Yelvington Jet Aviation, and it was just really, it was an operator that the person who owned it, they developed most of their money through like rock and quarry and that type of business. And so the FBO really was kind of a spot for his own aircraft, and then it was like, oh, we can operate this way too and sell fuel. And but it was interesting, so they're a big thing. Obviously, it was the Daytona 500, but to me, that kind of forward-facing, because even after that, because the first airport I worked at, we had commercial service too, and I would say there's definitely a difference in the and probably I'd say the FBO, at least the one I worked at, attentiveness to the passenger versus you're flying 125 or you're flying charter or just a private operator, and just how much really for us it was all about the customer, and it was all about making sure that you're not flying on Spirit Airlines out of O'Hare.
Right.
You're not Jeff Miller riding Spirit down to Mickey Mouse Land in the back with your Saburo's pizza. And so, I think that people, it was just a new level of attentiveness to the needs of the customer that, probably built a lot of skills for me, at least, that I forgot all about because now I'm horrible with customer service. But at least at the beginning, no. But, it did resonate, I think, where you're like, oh, wow, there's you just have to take it up such another level on that. At least how my experience was. Yeah.
And that's how I used to operate Scottsdale. I mean, our tagline was world-class facility. I mean, our airfield at Scottsdale is pristine, pristine, pristine. We don't allow weeds in our 320-acre airport. If anybody ever goes to Scottsdale, Google Earth it. You won't see weeds on the airfield. It's all rubber rock. It's all our pavement program was to the net nines because that's what we want to do. And
the first month, I'm going to put you on the spot here into this role. Is this feel like, yeah, this is where I want to be. This is I want to be in the FBO world. I want, you take all the skills that you've learned from your time managing not one but two airports, and I will add with Deer Valley, I was amazed at how many T-hangers were at Deer Valley.
Oh yeah,
blown away.
Opposite of Scottsdale.
Right, it was.
Oh yeah.
But all that skill that made you who you are, do you feel like you're this is the spot? I'm gonna,
Yeah, I do, Jeff. I really, really do. I feel like this is the place to be. This is my calling right now. This is where I'm going to make a difference, and this is how I can be able to do it. So it's cool, and that's important to me. Like, I love Scottsdale, like you love Chicago exec.
Yeah.
And working with the community, it's just what it's all about. You want to be surrounded by the right people. It energizes you, makes you a better person. So absolutely 100%.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny because like on our end, we used to be called Pelwaukee, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm fine with Pelwaukee. Whatever you want to call us, just use us. I don't care. But it's funny because we've made these shirts that say Chicago Executive Airport, and I told them, I was like, this is how I want it to look. I want underneath it to say, just like the Google font pronounced Pelwaukee. I was like, that way when somebody comes up to me and it's like, it's not Chicago Executive, it's Pelwaukee, but that's fine. I don't care. I'm fine. It's a cool name.
I know, right?
Yeah. No, so it's cool to have fun with this stuff, and I think it's cool when you're in a group like that probably meshes well with your leadership style.
It's all different, and it's really cool, and I'm excited to dive into whatever they need me to do to help support them.
And that especially you're gone, I'm just going to take... reality is, I don't know if this will ever publish. I'm just going to take all your notes to myself. And then be like,
do it.
I came up with that.
Work, so go ahead and do it. But try movie night. Good community event. We've done movie night. It's been working out.
It's funny because the movie night thing, somebody actually reached out to me and asked, they saw your article, which... I always loved pretty much anything that came out of what you guys were doing, because it was always something that at least was like, okay, that's cool. I could see that. There's some other airports that do things that people grab, and I'm like, no, don't look at that. I don't know what they're doing. Don't worry about that. We'll leave those airports nameless for now. But visually, I can show you some of those airports that do certain things.
Oh, man. So much I want to say, but I won't.
Yeah, right. So as an insider, some of this stuff has to stay off the record. I tell people about the podcast. I was like, I want the podcast to be as close to who I am in reality, but it can't be completely who I am because nobody would want to listen to that crap.
You're doing a great job.
Hey, thanks. Well, it's funny because, at the end of the day, people ask me all the time, like, oh, where's your next step? And I'm like, it's interesting because I don't know about you, but in this career field, there was a moment, and I have another podcast that'll probably come before this so people will know what I'm talking about, where actually a student interviewed me and asked me questions. And I remember I had this life moment where I was going into radiology. I was at the first airport I was working at. I didn't like the internship I was in with it. It didn't fit what I wanted. And I didn't understand anything about airports. And I'm standing there, and I'm thinking to myself as I look at this airport, I wanted to be a pilot, right? I wanted to be Maverick 2, but I was too fat to get in the fighter jet. So that didn't happen. And so, and salaries were really atrocious back then, if you wanted to be a pilot. And thankfully, that's reversed for now. But, it was so bad money-wise. And... I looked around and I'm like, somebody has to be in these buildings saying something like, I think the ticket counter should go over here. And fast forward, 20-something years later, I'm in Laredo, Texas, and I'm standing there and we're bringing in Aeromar Airlines, and I'm like, I haven't thought about it since then. I'm like, the ticket counters would look good over there. And I'm like, I've come full circle. So then I was like, okay, I'm an airport manager. What do I want to do now? And then I thought to myself, the one thing people always tell me, better or worse, Jeff, you never shut the fuck up. So why not put it over the airwaves?
I'm glad you said it.
Exactly.
Is this a podcast about you, or is it a podcast about me, buddy? I'm trying to figure this
No,
out.
no. It's all about me. That's why I always make my picture a little bit bigger. It's a Jeff Miller podcast talking about the executive in loan with Gary. No, I've enjoyed our time immensely. I always love talking to you. Anything I didn't ask you up front? You know, I did a podcast recording this morning, which also will come out before you, where I had my list of movies. Now, the person I spoke to on aviation movies, they were they were a movie aficionado, and I felt like my list looked like a garbage of junk candy, because I was like, oh, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, like, that's an aviation movie. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. The only reason why he has his hand between his butt cheeks is because he missed his plane. Anyways, what's your favorite movie?
Oh, God. All right, so this is how we're wrapping this thing up.
I don't know. Why don't you tell us, if it's not that? You know, people love to understand the human side, and Gary, you've been so robotic through this whole interview. I don't think people know who you are.
Oh, goodness. Well, my favorite movie is Beverly Hills Cop. Always has been, always will be.
That is a good one.
Aviation, how do you go wrong with Top Gun? I mean, you can't. You can't.
You
can't touch it. So
I did. It was funny. I don't know if you ever seen Quentin Tarantino's take on Top Gun. If you've ever seen that.
No.
Oh, you'll have to go look it up. The person I was talking to earlier had not seen it either. If you Google that, you'll find it and give it a watch. Yeah, Top Gun. No, absolutely. You know, I think that was my number two. My number one was Airplane, of course. I mean, I don't. You know, I'm more of a.
That sounds perfect for you.
Right.
I can see that with director Victor. I can see you up there.
Go dump the lights on the airfield.
You be the guy in the tower guys. I wish it's a bad day to quit sniffing glue. That would be you.
I was laughing with somebody the other day because I will be nice and I won't mention the name of the group, but there's a function that I, you know, part of the day job that I have to go to occasionally, and I sent the other person that link when Robert Stack is walking through the terminal, and they're like, you know, nuclear energy. So it's like every time I go there, everybody just asks for something, right? They're like, I want this, I want that, I want, you know, and I'm like, I just feel like I'm beating them off. No, you know, the thing about this is, and I was so happy that you wanted to come on the podcast because, again, people really like to resonate. That I found as the episodes go out and the comments that I get in is when they feel like someone, I will reiterate this, is being real. And I've always felt that from you. And it does. It builds trust, you know, because at the end of the day, even if you may not like what's being said, you know it's real. And you know that, you know, it's not... There's so much fakeness, you know, that happens, especially in our industry. Again, I'll preface this with amazing people. You know, generally speaking, there's a lot of amazing people. But, you know, some of this, like, it almost is like you're talking to a LinkedIn profile sometimes.
I hear you. I know what you mean exactly. But no, always have been real, always will be. And Jeff, you're a good friend, and I would do anything for you, as you know. As I know, if I ever called you, you'd be there right for me, and that's what's super cool about you. And it's the industry is amazing, and I've met a lot of very close colleagues and friends, and I would almost consider family. So thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you so much. I really love that. And I guess without further ado, we have everything we need from you, Gary. So thank you for being on Destination Aviation.
Thank you. Have a good one. We'll talk soon.
Well, thank you so much to Gary for being with us on episode 52, which could have been B52, but you know what they say, Love Shack, baby. No, I don't know. B-52s do have some pretty good songs. If you don't know who the B-52s are, go Google it. Otherwise, my references are lost on you. But no, it was great talking with Gary. I don't know when this is going to drop. I'm on vacation. I'm heading to the islands, and by that I mean islands in Ohio, up there. And actually, I was just talking with someone who built, transitioned, many of the airports, like up in Put-in Bay, Middle Bass Island, they're right off there from Sandusky. And they may be a future guest. They're still getting back to me on their schedule and whether or not it's going to fit in with what they want to do. So that could be fun, but I will be up there riding golf carts and enjoying myself. Who knows? Maybe some ice cream cones will be thrown in there as well. You probably heard at the beginning of this one, we have some votes in. It seems like people like the jet engine as much as we got some comments about the B-52 itself being the wrong episode. We also received in comments that people like a newer, upgraded sound. So this isn't exactly what you heard on the last one. So if you don't like the variety I did there, I thought I'd clean up a little bit, something moving forward that's not just a B-52, but more jet engine. Feel free to drop us a line at dapodcast85@gmail.com. That's where you can tell me everything that you'd like to know, or find me on YouTube if you'd like to leave some comments there as well. Whatever you choose. You know, it's funny because I am somewhat excited because I figured once I start really getting crap from people on the podcast, it's really getting out there and people are really listening. And every episode we grow, so I just want to say thank you to everyone. If you're enjoying the show, please tell a friend. If you want, maybe a relative or someone in your life that criticizes you a lot and you want to break from it, turn them onto the show. I'll take your criticism. I'll take it away from you. I'll hold on to it over here. But with that being said, really appreciate it. I'm heading out. Find us on our social media, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you get your posts, wherever you get your kicks. Let us know. And until next time, my friends, I'll see you down the runway.